Space, naturally, was and is man's ultimate rainbow. And as they explored the void, they claimed to search for other life, though deep inside, they believed there was no one else. And that fortune, when they found it, would be theirs and theirs alone. How wrong they were, in every way.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. My name is Jordan, and I've been described as the rodeo clown to Kumar's charging bull.
What?
Of comics facts.
Wow. Who said that? Whatever.
A faithful listener.
Okay. I wouldn't... A rodeo... Well, that makes sense because... In a sense, because you're the one keeping me in check. But I don't know if that's what rodeo clowns do. But often when I have to open 3 new tabs in an episode, you're the one that's like, let's close those tabs and get back on track.
That must be... It must have been meant as a compliment. That must be what they meant.
What does a rodeo clown do?
That's a good question. I'll have to ask and find out.
I've never witnessed a real rodeo. I thought they were just there to be gored by the bulls or something.
Well, perhaps that's what's occurring. Excellent. And today we're doing Captain Harlock.
Yeah, Captain Harlock, Leiji Matsumoto. So, as we mentioned last week, Leiji's death was announced a couple of weeks ago. I think he died before that, and it was only released to the press a while later. I don't know when he actually died. But this is a really big deal for me, as I think we talked about last time. I got a ton of... I ended up just... As soon as he died, I pulled one of my Space Battleship Yamato comics off the shelf and started reading that, and then decided to do the Captain Harlock for this episode. But I was just like pulling stuff on off the shelf nonstop. So my first exposure was to his universe, what's known as the Leijiverse.
Fantastic.
Was the Galaxy Express 3.9 English dub from 1982, released by New World Pictures, which is Roger Corman's distribution company. And that's a name that's going to come up again further down the line.
I'm absolutely sure it will.
But that movie, so it's about... The Japanese cut was 2 hours and 15 minutes, something like that. The Roger Corman cut was 90 minutes. I saw it on TV. I don't remember how old I was, but even butchered down to 90 minutes, I was really affected by it. In a big way that I remembered Leiji Matsumoto forever, and I was like, how can I get more of this stuff? And you can't. Or at least you couldn't for a very long time. And it was a bit like Robotech / Macross was for me, because that was a very butchered version of 3 different anime series.
Famously.
It would be like if you imported Star Trek and Star Wars to Japan and you're like, okay, we need to link these, so Captain Kirk is Luke's uncle. And then you cut a few scenes back and forth to try to make some kind of thing out of it. So, but again, as with Macross, which is one of my favorite things, somehow it came through despite the butchery, the emotion, the passionate emotions of it.
So I have a question, Kumar. Why aren't we doing that instead of the terrible movie that we did today?
It's a good question. Why aren't we doing Galaxy Express? I feel like maybe because it's just too close, except for the ending, which goes way off the rails. I just felt like it would... Maybe we will do it eventually, but I just feel like it's just so much like the... Oh, I know why we're not doing it. Because you can't get Galaxy Express in English. So you can't get the manga in English.
Ah, I see.
And that was kind of what I was getting to, is I wanted more of this guy that made this thing, and you just couldn't get it. So you could... so actually, in the 70s, Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato came over to U.S. audiences as this series called Star Blazers, where like characters' names are changed to like Derek Wildstar and stuff like that. And you'll see this again and again. I think one of the Harlock dubs, one of the early anime versions of Harlock came over, and like the main character Daiba, the kid character, was renamed Hairball.
Okay.
So this is like it's just a thing that just keeps happening over and over again. Oh, and again, Harmony Gold, which is the people that brought over Macross as Robotech, also brought over a version of Harlock and spliced it, as they did with Robotech, they spliced it with Queen Millennia, I think, and tried to make a story, because in the US they had syndication laws that in order to be a syndicated series you had to have a certain number of episodes, and that number was like 75 or something.
Okay.
So if you had a Japanese series which is 50 episodes, it wasn't enough. So they're like, how can we make this thing into 75 episodes? And they'd be like, oh, well, let's take these other two. The uniforms look kind of similar, and we'll just make this guy's granddad or something. And,
what butchery.
Yeah. And they just give it... So anyway.
Mind you, is it correct to say that Leiji Matsumoto himself had something of an expanded universe where characters would meet one another from different properties?
Absolutely. That's why they call it the Leiji-verse. So
okay.
the three main ones would be Captain Harlock. So let's go a little bit further back. So he started out actually drawing shoujo manga, girls manga, under his actual name, Akira Matsumoto. And he felt stuck. And he actually broke... His breakthrough was when he was 15 years old. And then he was kind of stuck, and then he had a kind of breakthrough, and he came up with the pseudonym Leiji Matsumoto to kind of differentiate himself from doing the girls' comics, which were like the... so he did a bunch of war comics, and one of the first tastes, besides Star Blazers, one of the first tastes in English you got was this very important book called Manga by Fred Schad, The World of Japanese Comics. This came out in 1983, I think.
Okay.
And it had some of the very first translations of manga. There were four sections of translated. One was by Tezuka.
Yep.
One was Ryoko Ikeda's Rose of Versailles. We'll be doing that one at some stage. There's Barefoot Gen is in there.
Yeah, Barefoot Gen.
And there is a complete one-and-done Leiji Matsumoto World War II fighter pilot story in there about these guys trapped on this island trying to get rescued. And Fred Schad's the name that will come up again in the show because he translated the Ghost in the Shell manga as well later down the line. So he'll come back. But so this was one of the few things you could get. In the 90s, there was a bit of a Galaxy Express revival in Japan. So Viz Manga ended up, in their magazine and America, started serializing chapters of the Galaxy Express sequel. But this original had never been released in English. So you could read chapters of the sequel, which was, I guess it's the same stuff. It's just like the further adventures of the Starship Enterprise.
Okay.
But... Anyway, so there was almost nothing. But anyway, so there are three linked series were Captain Harlock, Queen Emeraldas, and Galaxy Express 999. They all exist in the same universe, but there's no consistency of continuity. Like, Queen Emeraldas shows up and she's got in 3.9, and she's Maytel's sister. Maytel's the main character, the main female character in Galaxy Express, and she turns out to be her sister. Which doesn't jive with certain other things that happen in other versions, and then she's like really sick. She's got some fatal disease, but then next time we see her, she's not. When we meet Queen Emeraldas in Harlock, she's already dead. She's like,
yes,
she's a dead character, and the aliens use
someone's
hologram.
masquerading as her.
Yes, and it's like, no, Queen Emeraldas is dead, but actually her series came out after this one, and she's alive and fine. So it's very. None of that stuff was important to Leiji Matsumoto. He didn't really care about... All he cared about was the themes, I think, really. I don't think he cared about those aspects of the story so much. I think he had a very... And he called his comics... he didn't call them space opera. He called them boys' romance.
Okay. All right.
In the classical sense of the term, of like what was... there was the Enlightenment... which was like, here's technology, this is going to make us better. And then there was Romanticism, which was the reaction to that, which is like, no, the important things are emotion and nature.
Yeah.
And for Leiji Matsumoto, I think nature manifested as outer space. I think he had a real desire. I've read interviews where he was really like, his lifelong dream was to get up into space.
That's interesting.
So... But and also the other important thing is...
That makes sense reading the comic, because, as we'll get into, It has a very romantic... Captain Harlock is a very romantic figure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's probably
Almost
the
Byron-esque.
most... Yes, the most Byron-esque of all those guys, of all the characters. But I would say the other thing about it, and the lack of continuity, the continuity cloud, let's say, of these characters meeting each other, is the same characters are in each series, basically. There's especially Emeralda's and in 3-9, you've got these parent figures, which is Maytel and Emeralda's, and Harlock is the parent figure, and you've got a young kid who tags along for whatever reason. In Galaxy Express, it's because Tetsuro wants to get he wants to go to the planet where he can get a machine body and become a complete machine.
Okay.
And also, there's often the kid wants revenge. His parents have been killed.
Yes, that's the way it is in
Harlock.
In Harlock.
And it's the same things happen over and over again. In the sense of the same types of archetypes come up again and again. And when they appear, like when Harlock or when Emeralda's appears in Galaxy Express, it's like, that's not I thought she was dead, or I thought she was sick or something. It's not. No, this is an archetype that's showing up. This is your space pirate. This is,
Sure. Okay. No, that's good. So a bit like the Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, a little bit like that. Because wasn't Elric was also... Who was that? What was that other character that... Moorcock's other most famous character?
Jerry Cornelius?
Yes, Jerry Cornelius.
Yeah.
Weren't they like the same...
Yeah, they're all different manifestations of the same character.
Yes.
Archetypes.
So
very good. Well, we have talked only a little about Captain Harlock. So what is Captain Harlock?
Okay, so I just want to mention one other thing, which is for a long time, the only...
This is
the
fine.
only version you could get of any of this stuff was this amazing alternative cartoonist Ryan Cecil Smith, who's a friend of the show. I recorded an episode of Deconstructed Comics about Queen Emeraldus with him.
Oh, that's amazing.
Put out these self-printed risograph comics. So he didn't speak any Japanese, but he moved to Japan and he found these Matsumoto comics and he was so affected by them, which is a story over again. He's like, what is this stuff? He was like, I'm going to redraw these. And he redrew these Queen Emeraldus chapters himself. Like, he just drew them and then printed them in these tiny little risograph zines, which are like impossible to get now. But for a long time, that was only... And, the Queen Emeraldus that we've got now, which was only... It's like 800 pages, so it's like 2 volumes. Only came out in the last 5 or 6 years. And this Captain Harlock only came out in the last 5 or 6
Amazing.
years. And
we still don't have the Galaxy Train.
We don't have Galaxy Express yet.
Galaxy Express.
Because that's quite long. So I think Captain Harlock has 3 volumes. I've only got the first one because they're big fat hardcovers that I haven't been able to afford the other ones yet. There's only 3 volumes, and there's Yamato, the comic which Leiji made. Because he came into Star Blazers. He wasn't an originator of it, but he did a manga of it after, and that's come out in English also within the last 5 years. So something has happened where, well, I think Viz released a good version, like a DVD and Blu-ray, or wasn't. I don't know. Somebody released a Blu-ray of the English of like the full cut of Galaxy Express. So there's been an upsurge of interest. But I would say in Japan, it's like he's a giant, like an absolute giant. And when the Yamato movie came out, that was like the first anime movie that like exploded. And they were like, oh, we can make an industry out of this.
Yeah, even I've heard of Space Battleship Yamato. Yeah. So I'm surprised he's not more well known. In the West. The key point there is he's not well known in the English-speaking West. In France, he is a giant, and probably in Italy too, because those countries got tons of anime from the 70s. Especially France and Japan were very close, and they were just importing heaps of stuff. And when he died last week, one of the French newspapers, like a major French newspaper, had the front cover was like
3/4 of it, or 2/3 of it, was a giant Captain Harlock, and it was announcing the death of Leiji Matsumoto. And the bottom, you had Joe Biden and Zelensky.
That's
like in the bottom tier of the front of the newspaper.
That's amazing.
And people were saying, like, in France, we watch these shows every day. Like, it was after school, you'd come home, and these shows, Harlock, all this stuff would be on all the time. And even some of the, like, Arabic countries were definitely getting like, Go Nagai stuff. So, in other countries, it was certainly huge. It was only in the English-speaking West, for whatever reason, until the last 5 years, there's been a bit of a upcreep of this stuff. And I think part of it is, I remember I was translating something early on, I can't remember what it was, but the publishers were saying that kids only want the new stuff. They want to be, like, with the trends. They don't care about...
They don't want to read this old...
They don't care about the history. They don't care about stuff that's historically important.
Fair enough. Yes, okay, that makes sense. And I must say, reading it, you do feel the age of... This is reading Captain Harlock, the manga, which you provided to me before we watched the film. I can certainly see that it's a bit quaint. There are things that I really liked about it, but also it very much feels... It has a dated sense to it that even someone my age can pick up on.
Well, I think me and Ryan agreed that the word for it was naive. And I think it's... But I think what it is... Well, maybe it's quaint, and maybe it's dated. I think I like Harlock least of the three.
Okay.
But it's got all the same stuff that I love in it. And I do love... I love Leiji Matsumoto's art style, his very loose, quivering line. I am still, to this day, freaked out by his potato head characters. There's usually one or two in every series that, like... Especially if they're wearing glasses, there'll be this potato head character, and their eyes are, like, somewhere up at the top of this weird potato-shaped head, and their glasses are down here, and their mouths look like beaks, and they're so gross and weird.
Yep.
But there's always...
The first mate of the Harlock, for example, the guy that works on his mother boats.
The cook is the one that's really bad. She's like the most potato head.
Her eyes. You're right, her eyes are up the top of her head and her glasses are
and
down
you forget that those are her eyes.
Work?
The eyes are like way up, like, imagine if your eyeballs were like way at the top of your like hairline, and then anyway. All those things come out, but I actually, I don't know why I was... Galaxy Express, to me, really hit those romantic notes, like the real... I wish I could go to the stars, I wish I could get revenge for my parents' deaths. I think Harlock is kind of... The moment that's most in Harlock, and we can start talking about the comic, because it gets right into the beginning of it, was
very good.
This kid on Earth, what was his first name? His last name's Daiba. His father is an important scientist who gets killed by these aliens.
Yes.
And this is the first we've seen or heard of these aliens. And the Earth government is very complacent. They don't really care. They don't think anything bad's going to happen to them. You can see...
Our main point of view character for this complacency is the Prime Minister of Earth.
Yeah, who only wants to play golf. Anytime he comes with news, like there's some weird thing that's going on, he's like, okay, let's go play golf.
In most frames, he's under his blanket, napping.
Yeah.
Or sleep, and hiding under his blanket when people come to...
Reminds me of somebody.
Oh?
Now that I think about this guy who's this world leader that wants to play golf all the time and not do anything. Anyway...
Very good.
Yeah, so this giant orb lands on the Earth, and they're like, oh my god, what's this orb? And he's like, let's just go play golf. And you can see Matsumoto's very cynical about government, like, and especially that's throughout all the series, throughout Galaxy Express or Queen Emeralda's. Any form of authority is not to be trusted.
Fine.
So this kid's father's a scientist, he gets killed, so then this space pirate shows up from space, and he's a thorn in the side of the Earth. They're like, oh, Harlock's back. Wow, I hate that guy. He comes down, for whatever reason, he invites this kid, whose name, why can't I remember his name? He invites him to, he invites Daiba to get on his ship, the Arcadia, with him. And he says, come back if you want to join us. And he gives him a signal, like a kind of signaling device, a little handheld signaling device.
It looks a bit like a pocket watch.
Yeah. And he says, press the button and I will come for you. I will risk my life to come for you. That moment, that's the one I've been leading up to, is that real moment of principles or a code that is really important for the lead characters in the series. You've got the parental figure that has the code and the principles, and you've got the young person that has to learn that code. In Emeraldus, it's like you've got to kill everyone. You got to kill your enemies. That's it. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In this, it's about freedom. Freedom's another key thing. And all
freedom's very important in Harlock.
Yeah.
It begins pretty much every edition begins with the refrain,
yes,
which is that I am a pirate. I sail the sea of stars.
Yes, every chapter, yeah.
Underneath this flag,
yeah,
I am free.
Yeah,
and I live a life of freedom.
Yeah, actually, I think this one was translated by Zach Davidson, who is a great translator. Probably one of the top guys in the industry. I feel like, well, I'm Facebook friends with him, and
amazing.
Yeah, I don't usually notice you don't usually notice the names of translators, but I did notice this, and he also did a really amazing edition of Mountains of Madness, which we covered on Deconstructing Comics. Oh, I better ring the bell for that.
That's Alan Moore.
No, that's Lovecraft.
Well, no, but he did a Mountains of Madness.
Oh, he did. Okay, let's
bam,
ring that again.
Double ring.
Double ring. Yes. Well, he did it.
I thought you were referring to
League.
the
No.
Yeah,
it was.
League,
It was Lovecraft's. I can't remember the name of the manga. It was really amazing. But anyway, Zach translated that too, and he. But he is Zach loves Matsumoto. He was the only guy that could have done this. And I mean, I emailed them immediately after it was announced. Can I get in on this? They're like, no, it's already been covered. And it was Zach, and I'm okay. That's fine. If anybody's going to do it, it's got to be him.
If it can't be me, it's got to be Zach. Very good.
So, where was I going with this?
I was talking about the refrain that begins each.
Yes, so in the Emeraldus, it's Sea of Stars, and this one I think it's Ocean of the Cosmic Ocean or something. Anyway, it's just repeated.
Yes.
In Emeraldus, it's repeated a little bit differently every time, but there's always something about the Sea of Stars.
But freedom is very important.
Yes, and freedom, yes.
Over and over freedom.
Yes, and actually I think this is really important because it's like a key theme, but this ship is not run like a ship. So Harlock says it's like home. It is not just the workplace, it is the home for these people. Mm-hmm. So the people just live like they're at home.
Sleeping in the corridors.
They sleep in the corridors.
Drinking.
The first mate's always building model kits in his room, and he's like, if there's an alert and I call people to deck, they can come if they want, or they don't have to come. It's not realistic, it's an ideal of this is a perfect
anarchist commune.
Yeah.
First Daiba is horrified at what he sees. People sleeping in the corridors. He's tripping over them.
Yes.
They're chasing one another around. Someone's in his underpants.
They're stealing alcohol and stuff.
Yep, they're drunk, and he's dismayed because he's come from the stilted, stratified earth.
Yeah.
Mired in, rules and...
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And lack of ambition. And he can't. And he says, how does anything get done on this ship? This is not at all what I expected. But then, of course, they encounter a patrol ship. Harlock says, all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they all spring up. Become...
Is it all of them, though? Because I'm pretty sure the first mate never shows up on deck.
Probably not the first mate. I think he's working on his model.
Yattaran's always building models and never wants to show up.
But they suddenly become a fearsome fighting force.
Yeah.
And Harlock explains, each man here can do as he chooses. Yeah. But he has to fight like the very devil when we enter a situation that calls for it. Yeah.
So there's kind of an overarching plot about these people called the Maison, these aliens.
Well, they're the ones that killed Daiba's father.
Yeah.
Because they're a bit... It's peculiar. They're described over and over as the women who burn like paper.
Yes.
And they're simultaneously an ancient conspiracy.
Yep.
A distant threat.
Yes.
And an invading armada.
Yes.
They're all three of these things at once, which is a bit peculiar. So they've infiltrated human society as these women, and in fact one of them is the secretary to the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And they'll they will assassinate you if you uncover any facts that hint at their existence.
Right.
At the same time, they occupy a distant part of space that's completely black, that has no stars in it.
Yes.
Totally empty. And and then in addition to that, they've also launched a black sphere or hemisphere.
Yes.
Down to the Earth, which has landed, and as you said earlier, it crashes on the Earth, destroys a bunch of buildings, and all the Prime Minister is worried about is that it might have ruined a golf course.
And they're trying to find a way to build around it.
They want to build a golf course around it.
Yeah.
Make it the centre of a new pleasure park.
Yes.
And as you say, seems to be the overarching. There's an antagonist, the queen of the Maison.
Yeah.
I forget her name.
Yeah, I don't remember it either.
But she's kind of like she's the great threat. She sees Harlock as her nemesis.
Yeah.
And most of the stories revolve around uncovering or encountering something to do with these beings, which appear as beautiful women, but seem to be some kind of plant.
Yes, and they've taken the form of beautiful women on Earth. It seems like
when they encountered them in space, they look like beautiful women as well.
They did, yes, and also
I've only read the first volume.
Yeah, me too, and I'm not sure why they would have been on Earth for millions of years before there were people. But they asked that question. They're like, well, why have they only attacked now if they've been on Earth for millions? They do ask that question.
It's very odd. And I dare say it's all answered at some point, but it's quite odd.
I don't know if it will be
three
answered.
different threats.
I really think it's. I think this is coming out week to week, and I think he's again more concerned about the themes of freedom and things like that. I think I don't see how it can necessarily tie together in a way that's satisfying. Even I gotta watch the Galaxy Express movie again, because my memory is the ending was not. It didn't add up in the movie version, but I think the movie had come out much like Akira came out somewhere like in the middle of
before it was finished
or whatever. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, any other salient points about the manga?
I just want to say, even Mime, this character who's this kind of this alien being with
she subsists on alcohol. Yeah, she has elfin features. She subsists
on alcohol. She's again a Matsumoto archetype. There's a character called Claire, who's this woman made of crystal that shows up in Galaxy Express and stuff. So, what else do I have in here? Oh, the diarrhea line is my favorite. There's when Dive is going through the ship and this guy's running around screaming diarrhea, gotta go to the toilet. What else did I want to? Yeah, it's all about being a man. That's kind of what Daiba's journey is. And I did want to say there is an anime from 1980 called Arcadia of My Youth, which I have not seen, which is supposed to be Harlock's origin, and it's supposed to be pretty good.
Okay, well.
Which I have not...
I wish we watched that.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any... I think Matsumoto's pretty hands-on with all these stuff. But again...
Was Matsumoto involved in the film we watched? He must be.
No.
This came out very recently.
No. I didn't see his name anywhere in the credits of it. No. And when I don't see how he could have been. Okay. Based on the output of what we got.
Oh my god.
Well, except for the bird. He has parrot. His pirate parrot is this bird, this weird scraggly bird with a super long skinny neck.
Yeah, it's like a puffball. It's got a puffball body.
Yeah.
A smaller puffball as the head, an enormous bill, and a long skinny neck and long skinny legs. Yeah. And it looks so comical.
Yes. Yeah, and it's supposed to be. And yes, and all the booze jokes that's like
There's so many booze jokes.
Sense of humor. They're all there, and they're in Yamato too. They were all cut out for the Star Blazers release, or translated into something different. So Arcade of My Youth is supposed to be pretty good, but I have not seen it. But again, it's supposed to be different continuity. Yeah, and the bird. Yes, the bird is the only thing to me in the movie that was like
accurate.
Yeah, in a sense.
That looked like something
that was
carried over from the comics.
I do think some of the...
We absolutely should get on with dumping on this film.
Yeah.
But I have just some small points, small observations about the...
Oh yeah, because before
manga.
we started even, before we started recording, you sounded pretty lukewarm on it.
I am a bit lukewarm on it. All right. There are certainly things I liked about it. I like this whimsical tone. I like the spaceships. The spaceships look amazing.
Yeah.
In fact, the art style, the art. I appreciate you like the art. For me, it's pretty. It didn't really thrill me.
Sure.
It's like he's working to a deadline. Harlock looks like a bigger version of Dida. Dida looks like a smaller version of Harlock. I was waiting to discover they were father and son, or clones, or time displaced copies of one another.
I think there's some of that bullshit in the Galaxy Express movie with Maytel and Tetsuro of some sort.
In contrast, the way the spaceships are drawn is beautiful, and I especially like the Arcadia.
Yeah.
It looks like I wouldn't be surprised if Matsumoto had some sort of obsession with the Navy, because they look like... I mean, the Yamato is a famous battleship from the Japanese Second World War.
Absolutely. His dad was in the Japanese military in some capacity, and Matsumoto was born in 1938.
Okay. It's a bit young for... sure. No, but...
One thing I do want to point out is in every Matsumoto work, he's got those... No matter what planet the ship comes from, or what alien race, or if it's Earth,
the one that's radially symmetrical, the one that looks like it's like a circle.
No, it's not that one. But there's always these. You can see it on the poster on my wall too. There's always those
dials.
All the dials. What do you call all the telemetry stuff?
Perhaps he likes trains as well, because...
Oh, he loves trains. Okay. That's why Galaxy Express was a train.
That's why it exists.
It's not a rocket ship. It's not a spaceship. It's a train that goes through the galaxy.
Brilliant.
But you'll see it. It's identified as him. It's probably he's made his assistants do it. Like, I want you to drive 500
dials
on this panel all over the walls and everything. I think that's important because that's one part of the tech thing that I love. I love that, and he was one of the mecha guys, the mechanical design guys that
love
always
the way the
loved
ship
that
looks.
stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of boys, it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that Matsumoto described his work as boys romance, because I thought it was... I might just be the wrong age to be entering into this world.
Maybe I saw that
you entered
Corman
at the perfect
at the right age, however old that was. Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah.
Because I don't want to say... Naive is a nice way of putting it. Juvenile would be an unkind way of putting it.
Yeah.
But I felt I'm just not quite at the right age to be drawn into this whimsical world.
Right.
Which...
or the idea of somebody coming down and let's go off to space, kid.
Yes, yeah.
And then you have adventures out there and combat, and you meet strange people, and you try to fit in, and you have a new home out in space and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yes. It very much... I know I've talked before about how I had certain expectations of comic books from the 30s and 40s. So, you might say I have maybe a similar expectation or stereotype of manga from the 70s, which is that it's drawn with this kind of plain style. It'll have strange aliens that are characterized by a single characteristic.
Yeah.
There'll be purple giants.
Yeah.
Or there'll be burnable plant people.
Very Star Trek kind of, original series way of handling the aliens, I guess, in a sense. Yeah.
And I found that's the way I found this manga to be. I certainly didn't dislike it. Certainly didn't hate it.
Yeah.
But it didn't grip me the way that you're describing the way that it gripped you.
Yeah.
But I think one thing we can definitely both agree on, Kumar, is that this film adaptation, dating from... when did this come out?
I think it came out in 2013, but I saw somewhere else it was 2012, so that might have been the Japanese release, and then... I'm not sure. Let me double check, but yeah. Okay, so I hadn't seen this movie. Now I'm a huge Leiji Matsumoto fan. I just talked about how you couldn't get any Leiji Matsumoto in English, and yet I did not watch the Captain Harlock movie. Why? Because anytime I saw a still of it, I was like, that does not look like Leiji Matsumoto's artwork. Yep. And beyond that, watching the movie, it violated all his themes, as far as I'm concerned. All the things that were important to him.
I can't wait to hear about this.
The things that were important, I felt, to him. For example, the complacent Earth government. Oh, the opening scroll. Okay, opening scroll. So in the comic, which I guess was a bit different in the anime series. So maybe it's been violated once already, and maybe this is based more on the anime. But in the comic, nobody wants to make an effort to go to space.
Right. Space is the domain of the romantic and the virile.
Right.
And Earth is like the bed where you hide with the bedclothes over your head.
Yes, and then you play golf. And play golf.
Yeah. Yes.
In the movie, in the first 10 seconds, we learned that there's 500 billion humans out in space, and they want to come back to Earth.
First of all, that's so dumb. Like, look, maybe Harlock the manga wasn't solid on it.
So somehow they went out. So they went out to space.
I knew within seconds of this film starting that I wasn't going to like it.
So hang on. Let me try to figure this out. So they go out to space and they procreate to the point where there's 50 or 500 billion, I think.
Hundreds of billions of human beings
out in space, and then they're like, "Oh no, it's not working. We need to go back to Earth." I'm like, wait, how could it not be? How could you get up to 500 billion and not be working?
So it's vague. Either they exhausted the resources of
the entire galaxy.
The galaxy or universe, because it uses that word interchangeably.
Yes.
It uses the word universe constantly. I watched the English dub. Did you watch?
Yes, I watched
the English dub too?
Yep. On YouTube. It's available on YouTube.
I watched the copy that you uploaded, which
it's the same.
It was fine.
It's the same.
So it uses the word universe a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So hundreds of billions of human beings colonized the galaxy / universe, and either exhausted the resources of the universe or found the universe utterly inimical to human life.
Yes. Yet they got up to 500 billion.
Yeah.
And now they decide the one place it can come back to is Earth. And Earth is like,
How's Earth going to support 500 billion people?
Earth is like, no, this is a sanctified zone, I think they call it, or something.
They come up with that later. Everyone fights. First of all, there's the Homecoming War,
yeah.
Everybody fights over who's going to get the right to go back to Earth.
Yes.
Fair enough, because it can't. You've exhausted the resources of the galaxy. How's the Earth going to support you all? The science is so vague.
It's not. There's a kernel of romanticism in there of wanting to go back to the homeland, the place you're from.
Yes, but
I guess
vaguely,
sure. But yes,
stop sticking up for this movie.
Okay,
because I think it's more to do with the way the corrupt government props up its authority after the Homecoming Wars. So after the Homecoming Wars, there's devastation, and it's decided that this devastation can never occur again, and the remaining peoples band together into something called the Gaia Coalition, which holds as its central tenet that the Earth is sacred, exists within something called the Sanctified Zone, which no one can ever enter, and and also that no human beings may live on the surface of the Earth, and and this is the basis upon which we're supposed to accept that the Gaia Coalition is the baddie in this film, and it's never really. We're just supposed to accept that they're evil.
Yes,
because I don't really understand why. I think because people want to go home to Earth, but they won't let them.
This is a good question, actually. There were so many things that I couldn't really understand why people were doing what.
No.
But Harlock is out there in space, and he's a space pirate that's causing them... He's a thorn in their side, again. And he seems to be fighting to allow people back on Earth. He's
No, he has a different quest.
Well, no. So I'm talking about an ostensible
How
quest.
is he perceived? I don't think he's perceived as anything. We don't see...
Well, they attack his ship as soon as they see it.
The Gaia
They say, it's a Death Shadow class ship.
And they know what he's up to.
Right. Okay.
You see. This is another thing.
Oh, there's secret motivations. Everybody has secret motivations in the movie. It's like a movie, not like a pure-hearted boys' romance manga. There's all this
Everyone has confusing secret motives that are revealed as the film goes on.
But I want to say that the whole space colonies versus Earth is Gundam. That's every Gundam series for the past 40 years has been the outer space colonies versus the home Mother Earth. So it was just
a pretty common space opera trope, I think.
Yes.
Colonies versus metropole. Quite a lot of space opera is like that.
Yeah.
Where they break free or they return. It's in all kinds of things, from MechWarrior to Peter F. Hamilton's modern space opera science fiction novels.
Okay. So I'm sure Gundam ripped it off from somewhere else. I shouldn't have said that.
I think it's very... but I think it's a common trope. I mean, a
Yes.
space opera trope. I don't think anyone ripped it off anybody. I mean, it's just something that's characterized as space opera.
Right. So, so far at this stage, I mean, it's not making sense, but I'm like, okay, even Leiji Matsumoto didn't have a consistent version of Captain Harlock. He had 4 or 5 different versions.
This
he had
film
animes,
could have had a consistent version, and it just doesn't.
and I was like, okay, maybe this is just a version. But then we see Daiba for the first time, and he is designed to look like... Now, normally Leiji's teenagers look like 9-year-olds or 8-year-olds. They're supposed to be like 15, 16, but they look like squat little kids because that's his art style.
Yeah, he looked just like Harlock, but half as tall.
Yes.
And without an eye patch. Or the cloak.
Yes. Yeah, so as soon as I saw this teenager, I was like, oh boy, okay. So, as soon as I saw the design and the CG, it's really like watching a Final Fantasy video game.
That is exactly what it's like.
So, you know what? I actually thought about Peanuts. The Peanuts movie that came out, the CG movie that came out a few years ago, looked, in a way, like two-dimensional Charles Schultz comic strips.
Right.
But they were like, they had a 3-dimensionality to them,
Yes.
but
they were clearly the Peanuts characters.
they were the Peanuts characters.
So I never saw this, but...
Yeah, and there's
I just say we will eventually.
We will eventually. There is no way you could confuse this kid for Daiba. It's like...
Yeah. Okay, so this is probably a good point to talk about the way the movie looks. It looks awful. I don't like how this movie looks at all. And this is speaking as someone that didn't particularly love the art in the Captain Harlock manga.
You know what? There are moments that are pretty, but it's so dark. It's not what I imagined Captain Harlock's ship was like.
No, Captain Harlock...
Even though it's a pirate ship, and I don't know...
Well, they've messed up what the ship looks like. I've just said how much I love what the ship looks like in the manga.
Yes.
I love its clean lines.
Yes.
It looks like a submarine.
Yes.
It does have a sort of like a pirate deck on the back.
Yes.
But it looks so futuristic and beautiful. Whereas the one in this the Arcadia in this film we watched.
Yeah.
Harlock Space Pirate or whatever it's called. Space Pirate Harlock.
Harlock Space Pirate, I guess,
Harlock,
is the official name.
Space Pirate. It doesn't look anything like the one in the manga. It looks like it's ugly.
I think that's okay. So I think changing the design from the comic is acceptable because I think Matsumoto did it. The animes changed it a few times. That's fine, but this is a bad design. And the reason I brought the dials is there's not a single dial.
It does have
I saw in any...
It does have the steering wheel.
It has a steering wheel, but all those hundreds of dials that you always see in Matsumoto comics that are the heart and soul of them are absolutely...
dials in this one?
There are definitely dials in there.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Holy moly.
Look at that. You open a random page and
look at all the dials.
There's all the same dials on every ship, no matter where it is from in the universe or what era it's from.
Look.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just pointing at... This isn't... I don't think... The ships look so good. And this ship looks terrible. It's a mess. I think it's supposed to be spooky. But it's all rough.
Well,
difficult
I think
to see. It's
you could say it's spooky, but often if you see a dark movie, it's because they're trying to cover up the CG.
Thing.
Sorry, that was a mistake. They're trying to cover up the CG, which
right. It's always covered in a cloud of smoke.
watch like Pacific Rim. That like every battle scene was at night in that movie, right? Or Gladiator. Even Ridley Scott's Gladiator was so dark. All the Colosseum scenes, whenever they came into the Colosseum, it was really dark because they're really covering up CG.
You're right.
And I think in this ship,
it was the ship's always got a cloud of smoke around it. Smoke in space, first of all, is dumb, and it's always
yes, but if it was in the comic, that would be an acceptable dumbness because it's like the train going through space. Like, come on, how are you going to hit past light speed? How are you going to do anything on this train in space? That kind of stuff, I accept it to a certain degree.
Fine,
but in this CG movie, it's supposed to look like real life. It doesn't.
Surely it'd be much easier to make. I think you could make they spend a lot of money on this film.
Yeah, apparently, $30 million US. Apparently,
$30 million US.
Yeah,
and the character. I'll admit, the animated characters. So I believe it was motion capture.
Sure, it has to be, yeah.
Yeah. So the characters, it's all very smoothly animated. I won't say it looks good, because I think there's some problems with going for the realistic art style that they used to animate this film.
It's motion capture's fine, but people's hair never looks. It's always like flowing in this weird way.
Because you can't put motion.
But you know what? I noticed the same thing from when I watched Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. That movie, full CG movie.
Yes.
Anytime you had a shot of people's feet running through a room, it was like, oh my god, those look like real.
Because you can put the sensors on the feet.
Exactly.
You can't put sensors on hair.
And in this movie too, anytime it was just a shot of people from the knees down, I was like, oh my god, that looks so good. That looks like real boots.
Knees down is fine, because you're just looking at, it's like you're looking at boots and pants. But I have deep reservations about the hyper-realistic. Well, I don't know if hyper-realistic is the word.
Yeah, so the bird is in it. And it looks like the bird from the comic. Why is it in it? It seems really...
It doesn't belong, because everything else is in a very realistic style.
Yes. And
a very realistic style.
You know, I did kind of like the design of Kay, because I think she's a typical... she's a typical Matsumoto female in the way he's drawn her.
He draws them...
He's just like Yuki from...
Yeah, I've got a note of it here. I've written willowy with light bulb heads.
Yes.
Which pretty much...
Yeah, so that's kind of like what...
To me, here's the thing. Like this is a problem for me with... there are elements of Matsumoto's style, like they're aware of it, and sufficiently aware to make the female characters look a little bit like the way...
Because she's a little bit unrealistic, like her figure is... Yeah.
Then I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if they'd just gone for a stylized art form, a stylized representation, rather than this aggressively realistic one, which strips all the... I use the word whimsy. Strips all the whimsy, strips the fun and the romance out of it, and it looks so gritty and ugly.
This is one of those movies. One of these comics to movies, films where I feel like they were embarrassed by the comic.
Sure.
I feel like they felt like it was a 70s comic that is dated and juvenile, and we're like, well, we're going to make a modern...
I made this movie.
We're going to make a modern... We're going to update this and make it cool.
I hate that.
And put the cool stuff in that the kids like.
I'm just wondering, because these movies with a realistic art style, CG movies with a realistic art style have, I dare say, traditionally not done well.
Yeah.
Final
Fantasy, yeah.
Final Fantasy didn't do well.
Even the first one was, I think, that dinosaurs movie from Disney with the talking dinosaurs. I think it was just called Dinosaurs. And it was from the 90s, late 90s.
I don't know about that. I remember there was a sitcom called Dinosaurs, but that was puppets.
No, yeah.
I think particularly of the Polar Express.
Yeah,
sure. Robert Zemeckis' film that came out in 2004.
Yeah.
That one with Tom Hanks as a mocap actor.
Yeah, we're
famous, like, bombed, and one of the big reasons everyone offered for why it bombed was because everyone looks so creepy.
Well, it's the Uncanny Valley, right? And we're still there.
Uncanny Valley.
2013, this movie's 2013, still... and
smack bang in the middle of the Uncanny Valley.
Even now, anytime they make actors look younger, which is the thing that's happening more and more, I'm like, this does not look like a person. We had to deal with that CGI Peter Cushing that looks so bad that I complain about every day.
Yes. Oh my god. And he's passed away as well. I think there's something deeply immoral about resurrecting the dead.
I'm sure his estate was fine for it, but
they just want the money.
Yes, they want the money, but also I'm like, well, Peter Cushing was an actor that could emote with his face and move his eyebrows. And what is this CGI thing that I'm looking at that is so weird looking? They got an actor in there that apparently looked a bit like him and then CG'd over him, but it didn't work. It's still... I think we're still... I'm trying to think what the most recent one I saw was, and I'm still like, no. Oh, it was, again, it was Star Wars. It was the Luke Skywalker at the end of Mandalorian Season 2. I'm like, this doesn't look good.
Yeah. I very much want to return to the theme of the Uncanny Valley.
Yes.
Which we can do in a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I completely agree, and I hope people vote with their wallets about this extremely disturbing trend in... I think people
don't... I think we're the only ones that notice it.
Oh god. I'm sure our listeners notice. More about Harlock.
Okay.
Yeah, I've said everything's rushed. No one has time to... Nothing is set up properly.
Well, okay, so part of the problem with that is there's 100 subplots.
Yeah.
So Daiba, who's called Logan in this movie, in the English version.
I believe he's called Yama in the Japanese one.
He's called Yama Daiba, which is also not his name in the comic. He was not called Yama. He was something else Daiba, which I haven't been able to remember. But again, because they named him Yama, I'm like, well, that's okay, because there's different versions of Harlock. They can call this kid Yama. That's fine. They call him Logan. They used to call him Hairball. Call him Logan. I don't really care about that.
Okay.
That tiny. But he's got this whole plot where his mother was a botanist, so he was obsessed with growing plants in this greenhouse, and the greenhouse blew up. He blew up the greenhouse.
This is a key event that provides 3 characters' motivations.
And his brother ended up in a wheelchair, and his brother now is like high up in the Gaia Council, and so right off the bat, in the first 5 minutes, I was very specific about pointing out that moment where Harlock says in the comic, "You press that button, I'm going to risk my life to come get you, no matter what." To me, that's a key Leiji Matsumoto romantic moment about a man with a code believing in someone else, and he says he's gonna do this thing, and he's gonna do it. None of that in this. Kid already knows what the Arcadia is, and he gets on there and he tries to get recruited. And they only recruit one person. Or you need to know the password or something, and he knows the password, which is.
It says, "Why do we sail?" This is the first. So there are these guys in these odd deep sea diving spacesuits, and they say
on the Arcadia.
They're
the crew of the Arcadia. Yeah.
Yes, and so the Yama/Logan and 3 other blokes who are drinking in some dive bar. It looked like a Wild West tumbleweed desert town. They all climb a mountain, which is where the Arcadia has landed, and they appear and they say they want to join the Arcadia, and the deep sea diving spacesuit men say, "Well, that's fine, but we only need one."
Yep.
So tell me, why do we sail? And they're standing on gangplanks. Hanging out over the void. And the first guy says, "Well, I've heard you sail. Sometimes you sail for order."
Yeah,
that's a terrible answer. So the leader of the spacesuited men draws his thumb across his throat and says, "No!" And this guy is literally dropped to what appears to be his death from several kilometers up.
Yeah.
Down he goes. Then the next guy says, "For riches, same, no." The third guy's so intimidated he just falls off. The fourth is Logan. He looks as though he's not able to think of the answer. The plank retracts. He starts to fall. He screams, "Freedom!"
Yeah.
He's rescued by one of the light bulb women. Kay.
What if somebody had given the right answer first?
Yeah.
What happens to the other 3 guys?
Well, they would have just been dropped into the abyss. Turns out they were dropped in the water, so they all survived. But I was watching this thinking, this is a pretty grim way to start this movie.
Yeah,
with guys being executed.
Yes, but then it turns out that pretty soon we learn that Logan's a spy sent by his brother.
Yes.
And he's got a little. They put a little spy thing in his eye when their ship's under attack.
He owes his brother a debt.
Yes.
Because he's the cause of his brother's crippled status.
Yes.
His brother is a paraplegic.
Yes.
He doesn't have use of his legs. The background to this motivation that the film offers us is like a half-minute scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Half-minute. They're in a greenhouse.
Yeah.
Looking at plants. Someone says, "The plants aren't growing." Logan says, "Damn it, Mum wanted them to grow."
Yep.
He runs to a wheel that's taped off with signs that say, "Do not turn."
Yeah.
Essentially. He turns the wheel. The greenhouse explodes.
Yep.
End scene.
Yes.
And it turns out in that greenhouse accident, Ezra, his brother's legs were crushed, and his other companion, a girl, was
Ezra's wife or
Ezra's
lover?
wife / lover was killed.
Well, no, she brain dead at least.
And placed in sort of like the Emperor in Warhammer 40,000. She's placed in a life support system.
And a holographic version of her walking around.
And that's a reveal. She's actually a hologram. Yeah. This film is full of so many dumb reveals that aren't set up.
So this whole thing about Logan being a spy, they find out the Arcadia finds out pretty quick.
From the start, apparently.
And it goes back and forth like probably 3 or 4 times in the movie.
He changes sides.
Logan and Arcade and Harlock go from being buddy buddies to being pointing guns at each other, And I lost track. I was like, wait, why they turn into now?
There'd be a reveal, and then he would switch sides. And
we
then there'd
haven't
be
even
another
talked
reveal.
about the fact that Harlock is 100 years old. There is something in the universe called the Genesis clock, which has 100 points, which if you detonate them, it will reset time.
Harlock, instead of being the last free man, is on a quest to activate something called the Genesis clock.
Yeah.
Which means he has to plant 100 bombs in 100 points in the galaxy.
Yeah. What is this clock? What is it?
It's not explained.
Where did it come from?
No, never explained.
The Earth people know about it.
And the Earth people know about it. That's
Harlock,
right.
Not just Harlock. Everybody, the people,
They know.
the Gaia Council
They're
knows about
desperate
it.
to stop him, but they don't. But they know what the Gaia clock is, and they know that he's planted 99 bombs across the galaxy, and yet they focus on stopping him planting the 100th.
And the crew...
They could have gone and picked up any of the other 99 bombs at any time.
The crew of the Arcadia also knows that this is the plan, is to... They're helping him to set off these bombs and reset the Genesis.
And here's the problem.
Why? They don't say what happens when you set off the bomb.
Exactly. They have conflicting goals. On the one hand, they're busy insisting they need to go back to Earth. We need to go back to Earth. It's our home. And the evil Gaia Coalition is keeping us from the Earth. That's why we need to explode these bombs.
Yep.
And what they're supposed to do is reset time.
And what's
that supposed to achieve?
What does that mean? Where? The whole universe goes back? How do you... Yeah. Once you go back, how do you change...
Are you going back? Is it...
Yeah, and is the time... Are people going to behave differently if you reset the timeline?
Is the word... They say we need to go back and fix the mistakes of the past. And it's like, well, what are those mistakes?
Yeah.
Has the Earth been exhausted? If the Earth is exhausted, why are you trying to go back to it?
Yeah.
Is it because you should never have left the Earth in the first place? It's not explained, and those two goals are not compatible. So the whole ship of Harlock's men are just blindly following on this dumb wild goose chase of planting 100 bombs because it A, will let them live on Earth again, and B, will reset time so they don't have to live on Earth again.
Yep.
I'm watching this and thinking, this is really dumb.
Yeah.
Why is this? And the only reason it's like that is because we need to believe that the Gaia Coalition is evil.
Right.
So... because the Gaia Coalition, incidentally, never really does anything evil in this. I think almost at the very end they do.
Yeah.
But for 90% of the film, the Gaia Coalition never does a single evil thing.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, they stopped the homecoming war.
In fact, they do good things.
They lied about
seems to
the
be their
condition
big
of the
crime.
Earth. That's the only thing. So what happens is, so there's a lot of cat and mouse. There's always some super weapon that one side of... Well, no, it's usually the Earth comes up. Oh, we have this super weapon. It's the photon converger.
The photon converger.
Converger. That's what we use to beat him. It doesn't beat Harlock. But they... So Harlock finally reaches Earth, and then it's revealed that the Earth is not the paradise that it appears to be. That's all projection, a holographic projection. It's actually been ruined by dark matter.
Yeah, and it looks like Hellstar Ramina by Junji Ito.
Yes. And then we get a huge reveal that actually the dark matter destruction of the Earth was caused by Harlock himself.
Oh, okay, so this is the ostensible hero of the story. The one that the insidious Gaia Coalition has been fighting against the whole time.
Yeah.
It turns out that he's the one that destroyed the Earth.
And there's this whole complicated thing which I did not understand. There used to be 4 Death Shadow class ships.
Well, what happened?
They had alien dark matter technology in them. There's only one of those dark aliens is left, which is
well, I know what I can tell you what happened. I can tell you what happened because I was following this.
Okay.
Bit. What happened was the Gaia Coalition came to power, said, the only way there's going to be peace is if people stay away from Earth. That's why we're going to commission these 4 ships with the help of the only alien race we've ever discovered, the elfin, light bulb-headed women people.
Yep.
They're going to commission some of their crazy Magitech dark matter engines, which will power these 4 Death Shadow ships, which will keep everyone from ever coming within range of the Earth. And Harlock is chosen as one of the captains. Okay. Also, there's something also with his engineer buddy. It's never really
so
made
Tochiro.
clear.
So in the comics, Tochiro was the designer of the Arcadia.
Okay. So he
died. He always talks about his best friend who died a lot.
Along with Emerald.
And I will tell you something which I haven't read, but I know, at least in some versions of it, Tochiro chose to die for the sake of the Arcadia. This is another key. Leiji Matsumoto is like, this guy chose death.
Okay.
Keep that in mind for what's coming up.
Yeah, keep that in mind for what's coming up, absolutely. So, Captain Harlock is one of the captains of these 4 Death Shadow vessels, which are supposed to enforce the sanctified zone to prevent anyone from entering. He somehow finds out that the elite of the Gaia Consortium or Coalition are secretly living on Earth, or maybe visiting. They're touching down in space. They touch down in ships.
Yes.
And then he decides that this evil hypocrisy. This is utter hypocrisy that these rich, powerful people dare to visit the Earth that no one else is allowed to visit. That he instantly fires on them, killing them.
Yeah.
Including presumably their pilots and servants and all other manner of innocents.
Yep.
And then he promptly starts firing on the other 4 Death Shadow ships.
Right.
But because it's not an even fight, because there are 3 against his single ship, so then because he's being defeated, he decides that what he's going to do is self-destruct the Arcadia to create a barrier of dark matter around the Earth.
Okay.
What this is going to do to the Earth... Well, we know he didn't think it through, because instead of... He thinks there's just going to be a barrier of dark matter around the Earth, and what, is sunlight going to get through that barrier? Is the Earth going to be fine underneath that barrier? He doesn't care. And, you know, even in the context of the show, it doesn't work, because he ends up turning the Earth into a blighted hellscape. He destroys the 3 other ships.
Yeah.
The Earth is destroyed and turned into Hellstar Domina.
His eye gets messed up. That's how he ends up with a patch.
And the ship is reincarnated as the biomechanical monstrosity.
Yes, and Tochiro's consciousness is in the computer, it seems.
Yeah, like Evangelion.
He speaks to it.
He's become...
Well, it actually... You know what? It was...
Everyone's all tied together.
You know what
in a
it was
gross
like?
mess.
It was like... Well, what it came later, but Han Solo, a Star Wars story, is very makes all the same mistakes in the sense of that was so. This is probably not okay. I'm opening a new tab. I'm opening a Han Solo tab.
Look at the time.
Okay, I gotta open. I know we're 1 hour, but I have to open the Han Solo tab.
All right.
So you watch Star Wars, and you hear about this guy, this space pirate. He's got this cool gun. He's got this kind of Wookiee friend. He's in debt to some kind of gangster.
Right.
He somehow got a spaceship in some sort of gambling of some sort. It sounds like this guy has had 10, 15, 20 years of wild swashbuckling adventures.
Yeah.
No, all that stuff happened in one day. He rescued the Wookiee. He won the Millennium Falcon. He got handed the gun, his special laser. He ended up giving his Wookiee a nickname, Chewie. Yep. We get an explanation of every little thing, and it all happened in
winning
like
the starship. Yep, it all happened in 48 hours.
He did the Kessel Run, all that stuff. It all happened in a couple of days.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's very similar. We get all the Captain Harlock stuff. It's just here's how the eye and Han Solo. The reason I thought of it was that the consciousness, the ship. Han Solo talks to his ship as if men talk to cars and stuff sometimes.
People talk to ships all the time.
They call their cars he, she, or whatever.
It doesn't have to have
it doesn't need to have a literal consciousness in it.
Oh.
And Han Solo had the literal consciousness of that droid put into the computer of the Millennium Falcon, and that's what this was like. That when his eye got burned out and the consciousness went into the computer, I was like, okay, this is the same. This is not what we came for. Like, this is not 10 years of swashbuckling. This is just...
It's 48 hours.
This is a continuity wank, is what this is.
Continuity wank, perfect word.
Yeah.
And it's very similar, you're right. Everything that characterizes Harlock, his ship, his alien companion, the fact that he has a lost buddy that he talks to, it all just happens in half an hour.
The alien buddy, even her... Yeah. His relationship with her is defined by this moment.
So the ship is kind of like an eldritch abomination. It's been created by this gruesome act.
Yeah.
Where he nuked the Earth, and he's been brought back from the dead. The ship's come back from the dead all wrong, like the Event Horizon in the Event Horizon movie.
Yeah.
His alien friends come back, and he's come back, and he's no longer is no longer of human flesh. He's become an immortal, unkillable.
Yeah, he's immortal.
Okay, so the Evil Gaia Coalition, which is fighting Captain Harlock, turns out to look pretty reasonable to me because they're trying to stop the guy that nuked the Earth.
Yeah.
And what's more, it's revealed that there's no such thing as the Genesis clock, despite the Gaia Coalition knowing about it. And what Harlock is actually trying to do is destroy the universe with his 100 bombs on 100 worlds.
I was having
You
trouble.
were probably checked out by this point.
I was really having trouble keeping track because at the end there's a huge space battle at the end where there's they pull out another super weapon. They're like, this one's going to destroy Harlock, or he pulls out a super weapon. I can't remember. Maybe they both did. And I was just like, why? I couldn't remember why. I couldn't remember why Logan and Harlock had switched again and were attacking each other again.
I can't keep track of it either. But what did happen was it was revealed that the Gaia clock wasn't... not the Gaia clock. The Genesis clock was not going to turn back time. Surprise, surprise. Instead, what Harlock was trying to do was destroy the universe and create a new one.
Right.
And obviously everyone's pretty...
Oh, I thought that's what the meaning of reset the clock was.
Oh, no. There was no... No. It turned out that was the...
Right.
I'm pretty certain.
Right. Okay.
He was trying to atone...
Yes. For destroying the Earth by destroying the universe. Got it.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, right? So, the Gaia Coalition, the baddies, trying to stop the guy who, A, nuked the Earth, B, trying to nuke the universe.
Yes.
These are the guys we're supposed to hate.
Yeah.
Their only crime... Okay, so their main crime up to that point has been to hide the fact that the Earth is wrecked from the population.
Yes.
That's their sole crime.
And they hijack the airwaves, and Logan gives a rousing speech to the citizens to reveal... He finds a flower, sorry. He goes down and he finds a single growing flower, and he's like, life is returning to the Earth.
It's like Wall-E.
So they hijack the airwaves, and he reveals to everyone that life is returning to Earth, and just wait, and it will be fine again, and then all 500 billion of you can move back, I guess, is the plan. I'm not sure what the end game is here.
I'll give the film very little credit. Harlock talks a lot about freedom, and the reason he's obsessed with freedom is because he's trapped. He's trapped inside his monster ship.
Yeah.
And he feels like the only way he can escape is by destroying the universe.
And yet, you know what?
And that's his atonement.
You know what? Something that was so, in a sense, ridiculous in the comic is the people sleeping in the hallways and the guy building his models, his little plastic model kits, the first mate, and refusing to come out of his room anytime there's a battle. It seems ridiculous, but it's thematically tight, I would say. I would say it fits right in the way, and it fits in with his drawing style. It makes sense in the world. And I guess it wouldn't make sense in a movie, but when this movie started and you see how the ship is run like a tight ship, and is not the sloppy world of Leiji Matsumoto, I was like, this is not what this is about.
No,
it's not what it's supposed to be about.
It's a grim, grown-up, dull setting. It has none of the fun... The people swigging alcohol, building model ships, the chef running around battering people.
Yeah.
It's got none of that. The charm.
There's no comedy beats.
Yeah, well, very little. The first mate has some cornball lines.
The first mate, there's a line where when Logan is showing the flower to Harlock, who's been tied up in a cell at that point.
Yeah.
And the first mate runs in and he starts screaming something. Then he sees a flower. He says, "Oh, a flower." He says, "A flower." I thought that was the one moment where I had a mild chuckle.
Right. Yeah. There's he has all kinds of lines which are supposed to be hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's show the emperor who's his daddy or thing.
Yes.
Or we show the patriarch who's his daddy.
Yeah.
It's like it's so obnoxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's full... Yeah, there's no levity. Harlock is ridiculous. Not like evil, first of all. An unambiguously evil character. But also ridiculous. He's constantly throwing his cape around.
So even Kay, who I said before, I like the design of Kay in this movie. Like I like the design of the bird, independently.
Right.
Her personality is all wrong, because Kay is actually a kind soul. A gentle person.
But in this, she's a badass.
She's a badass.
Rough riding badass.
Yeah. So I think it, like, as soon as I saw what the ship was run like, and all those kind of things, I was like, this is the opposite of what Leiji Matsumoto's comic was.
Yeah, I completely agree. There
way.
are no themes.
No. There are no themes.
There are no themes.
The theme is, I guess...
They want it to be freedom, but they don't lay any groundwork. They just lurch from... Nothing's set up. Yeah. No groundwork is laid. They just lurch from point to point and expect us to sympathise with the handsome hero.
Yeah.
And hate the bearded Gaia Coalition Council. And without setting any of it up. Oh, they're just evil. They do evil things at the end. They use the so there's the photon condenser or whatever it was
Converger.
called. The photon converger. Then there's the Jupiter converger.
Yes, or was Jupiter's... Was it something else? Anyway, yes.
I'm pretty sure it's just converging.
No, was it... Yeah, okay, yeah.
And it fires an enormous beam that can destroy the Earth. And the patriarchs of the Gaia Coalition eventually decide that Earth will be a better symbol if it's not around anymore. And they decide to shoot Harlock with their Jupiter cannon.
Well, they're using it for targeting. Like, they're using the Arcadia as a reticle of some sort to, guide the beam. And since they go off course, they miss. It misses. The beam misses the Earth.
Yeah. Yes.
This movie is 2 hours long, by the way.
It's too long. It's a complete mess. And it's ugly. It's ugly. All right.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Bukimi no Tani.
Okay.
Which is the Uncanny Valley.
Okay, yep, okay.
See, would you
Bukimi no Tani, yes. Bukimi is, usually the word I associate it with is creepy. And the reason is because when Garbage Pail Kids were brought over to Japan, they were called Bukimi-kun. cards. That's
fantastic. Creepy kids.
Yeah, basically.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So, the Uncanny Valley, which is a term which I'm sure is familiar to everybody, because it's a catch-all term that can be used to describe all manner of unsettling imagery. It has a specific meaning, which I'm going to go into, but as a theory, it's a bit pseudoscientific, and it's most useful probably as a I
think it was initially used to talk about robots.
It absolutely is. I'm going to go into that.
Okay.
But it's good as an icon of cultural commentary.
Yes.
To describe everything from Cronenbergian body horror to...
I've only ever heard it used to talk about robots or CG in the last 20 years.
CG will be a good point. Like horrible waxen rubbery CG that doesn't look like people.
Yeah.
So, or the dead eyes of Tom Hanks playing the conductor in the Polar Express film.
Yes.
So the term was originated by a guy called Masahiro Mori in 1970.
Yeah.
Who was at the time a robotics professor at the Tokyo Institute of Technology, and he's still alive today.
Yeah.
And he published an essay, which he later turned into a book.
Okay.
And I imagine everybody's familiar with the concept, which is the idea that he was talking specifically about robots or automata.
Yeah.
Become more... You become more likable, or rather you feel a greater affinity towards them the more human-like they become.
Yeah.
And they're up to a point.
Yes.
Up to a point. At which point, when it starts to get human-like, but not quite human-like enough...
Something's off. A little bit's off.
And it goes straight down into a trough before rebounding quickly as you start to approach...
Actual
human beings.
Yeah.
And that trough is called the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
And, so he was talking about robots. He said,
So Uncanny is, in my translation book, is not... It should have been called the Creepy Valley.
Well, I think...
Or something like that. Because Uncanny is...
Well, sometimes people... Well, one of the things that characterises the Uncanny is an unsettling familiarity.
Yes, sure.
So it seems like a clever translation.
Right, yeah.
Even if perhaps it doesn't capture the precisely what Mori was trying to say. But so he was talking in the essay. I actually read the essay as preparation for this. He talked specifically about prosthetics, which in the 70s were becoming advanced, but I doubt prosthetics have got much more lifelike from the 1970s to today. He says that prosthetics look lifelike with wrinkles and nails, and yet they still look somewhat wrong.
Right.
And if they move especially, they look deeply unsettling.
Right.
He says, if someone wearing the hand in a dark place shook a woman's hand with it, the woman would assuredly shriek.
Right.
And interestingly, in the 1970 essay, his solution to the problem of the uncanny valley was to avoid designing lifelike automata and lifelike prostheses entirely and go for stylization. I can read a quote from the article.
Okay.
Because of the risk inherent in trying to increase their degree of human likeness, that is, robots' degree of human likeness, to scale the second peak, that is, heading back up towards lifelikeness, I recommend that designers instead take the first peak as their goal, which results in a moderate degree of human likeness and a considerable sense of affinity. In fact, I predict it is possible to create a safe level of affinity by deliberately pursuing a non-human design. We should follow the same principle in designing prosthetic hands. In doing so, instead of a pitiful-looking realistic hand, stylish ones would likely become fashionable. And I think... I think this film took the exact wrong approach. They completely ignored Maury's advice, and they've tried to climb the second peak.
I don't think we should say this film. I think every CG...
Any mocap realistic...
that they're doing now with...
They should be
anytime they're trying to do a real person, not like a CG monster, but a CGI actual person.
It's a fruitless... You'll never scale that.
Well, we might in 20 years. Maybe 20, 30 years, the technology might be there, but...
But I think... but also I think it's the wrong direction. Like I agree with Maury, and there's a quote. There's a famous story about Pixar, which is that one of Pixar's very early films, which is something called Tin Toy. You might have heard of it. It's essentially like Toy Story. There was famously a horrifying baby that interacted with the toys. I've got a quote here. When Pixar screened a computer-animated short film called Tin Toy in 1988, test audiences hated the sight of the pseudo-realistic baby named Billy who terrorized the toys. So this strong reaction persuaded Pixar, of course a giant of the animation industry, to avoid making uncannily realistic human characters. It has since focused its efforts on films about living toys, curious robots, and talking cars to win Academy Awards and moviegoers' hearts. That might be apocryphal, but it seems to me that Pixar has made...
that neighbor kid in Toy Story...
Yeah, but they always try not to show him too much. It's like Peanuts, right? Legs, hands, trying to avoid showing the features as much as possible. Now, like I said, that story might be exaggerated for effect, but what's undeniable is that Pixar makes great animation and has almost never got realistic-looking human characters.
No. Even when there are humans, there are a lot. Like Up, and what was the one about emotions, about the sadness? What was that one?
Inside Out.
Inside Out. There are people in it, but they're just cartoonish. They don't try to make cool-looking people.
I feel like I'm ready to go out on a limb here and go hark back to what we were saying about the reanimation of dead actors with this technology. That I think I agree with Maury that this whole endeavor is a dead end. And that we should instead be focused on making beautiful, stylized art with a moderate degree of human likeness and a considerable sense of affinity, and avoid what some people have dysphemistically called corpse fucking.
I would say I agree, but I think if we do want to get to the point where that CG people look like people, we shouldn't stop doing it. You have to keep making those. You have to keep stumbling until you get there.
Well, I think it's an artistic dead end. Perhaps it's not a scientific dead end, but I think it's an artistic dead end, and that we should resist it. We should run screaming from it. And this film I offer up as evidence because it's squarely in the uncanny valley. People don't look good. We're going to come
up against this. Well, a different version of this when we get to The Crow. Because they use CG to map, but they had Brandon Lee's face and they just put it on another actor.
Right.
So it's not the same thing.
When did that come out? That was early 90s?
Mid 90s.
Well, right.
But that was like that was not a case of trying to recreate him completely make the face out of CG.
No, they were just painting it on another actor because he died during production. Right. Right. And it's funny here that because it's baffling to me because this film. Harlock, Space Pirate, it makes some effort towards producing stylized representations of Leiji Matsumoto's characters.
Yataran, right. the first mate, or who's called Yulian in this, barely. Kay and the bird.
Why even do exactly like
And I don't like. I didn't even like how Harlock is a very lithe character the way Matsumoto draws him, but he's quite buff in this, which I didn't like.
Yeah, they're aware that these beloved characters have a certain look, and instead of just going all in and reproducing them in a way that recognizable from the manga, they just hint at it.
Yeah.
And the rest of it's so grimy and realistic, and it's ugly. It looks so ugly and unpleasant, and I hate it.
Yeah. Okay, let's do our scorecard. So the comic, it's a clear yay for me, but how about you?
I'm going to say nay.
Okay.
I'm going to say, yeah, for a person at my unfortunately jaded stage of life, I didn't enjoy it that much.
The movie, I think it's clear nay for...
100% nay.
Nay, okay. This is easy. Adaptation, nay. Big nay for me.
Huge nay. The things that I did like about the comic are missing from the film in every respect.
I would say not even things you like, the things that are important in the comic, those themes, the themes of freedom.
Everything that you've expounded on over the last 90 minutes.
Yeah. All the themes about having a code and principle, all those things, none of those things are in the movie. So
yeah, even the idea of freedom. What's freedom mean in this film? For Harlock, it means freedom from being responsible for the most horrifying event anyone could possibly commit, the wiping of Earth's biosphere.
Free from
single-handedly.
Bizarre.
He's celebrating that. That's what he's celebrating at the end. Oh, I'm finally free from this burden. The righteous burden that you fucking destroyed the planet Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Screw this movie.
Absolutely. Okay, next week.
Next week, come on.
Next week we're going to be moving on to M. Night Shyamalan's Old.
This is my choice. This is 100% my choice. I pushed for this.
It's from the last year or two. It's very new. It's one of the newest things on our list. Based on a graphic novel called Sandcastle, which is by Swiss artist Frederick Peters.
Swiss, not Swedish.
Yeah,
okay,
Swiss.
Right, very good, very good.
And the writer is Pierre-Oscar Levy. I don't know anything about Pierre-Oscar Levy. Frederick Peters has drawn some stuff which has been released in English besides Sandcastle. But it'll be... I don't know. I've heard it's really bad, but maybe okay. I don't know.
Shyamalan movie. I mean, it's not The Sixth Sense.
All right, here we go.
How good could it possibly be? See you next week.